Hello everyone, so before we get into today's video, I wanted to say something about this. So we woke up to the news here in the UK on Saturday morning, the very sad and shocking news that Chris from the Mr. Sillage or Mr. Sillage channel passed away, and we were all shocked in the fragrance community, and I just wanted to pass on my sincere and heartfelt condolences to close friends and family and say that he was a really positive guy. He posted comments on some of my videos and I on his, and that's all I really had in terms of contact. But I saw a lot of his other stuff that was going on online, and he was a really great active member of the community, and it's going to be really hard to go on without him. He's going to be sorely missed. I was thinking it's too sad to put any jokes in, but I remember he liked my style with the jokes at the beginning of the video, so he'd probably approve. So here we go. I'm just going to throw in a couple of bloopers that happened as I was attempting to film this video. It was very hot, so that's why I'm only wearing my underpants, because I forgot to have shorts with me. I'm at Claire's this weekend. That's my only explanation for what's about to follow. I do really like the smell of Pineapple Vintage Key Intense. To me, it's... Hello there. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. More like my batch of Aventus. It's the closest they've got in my... Hello everyone, welcome back. So today it's Fragrance Showdown time again, and I'm going to be comparing Creed Aventus with Pineapple Vintage King Intense, the new release from Parfums Vintage. So Parfums Vintage, if you're not already aware, have quite a few fragrances in their line now, and they pretty much do clones of niche and, in one case, designer fragrances. The main range that they've got most of are called Pineapple Vintage. There was the original fragrance, which came out at the same time as Pineapple Vintage Noir. Both were based on Creed's Aventus. They both had a very strong, realistic pineapple note, which is a note in Aventus, but I feel in both those it was exaggerated, and you had more of an obvious realistic, if you like, pineapple smell. Then there was a Noir Intense, Pineapple Vintage Intense. It's a little bit confusing. They're all different twists on the same note profile, basically, and different batches, maybe, of Aventus, with maybe more fruity, more emphasis on the pineapple, bit more smoky, woody. And this is their latest one. The company is saying, really, perhaps this is one of the most balanced ones that has quite a bit more woodiness than the original Pineapple Vintage or Pineapple Vintage Intense. Perhaps a less accentuated pineapple note, although that's still in there, and a bit more of a balance, just a really well balanced, I think, interpretation they're hoping of Creed's Aventus, and I guess they're trying to make them better every time, so maybe they're hoping we'll think this is their best attempt to copy the fragrance yet, and maybe, who knows, there's a bit of a special pineapple vintage thing in there too. So Creed Aventus, of course, the most famous niche fragrance out there for men, and it's really become something of a phenomenon of its own. There's actually a fragrance Facebook group called the Aventus Lounge, where people collect and discuss different batches of Aventus, which just seems ridiculous. It seems strange that the company can't control the quality of their ingredients or the way they mix them so that all the batches should smell the same, really. But it's almost become a kind of a good thing for some Aventus fans, that they, like a fine wine, they're looking at different vintages of the fragrance. I'm not an expert in any of that, and I'm not madly interested in it, because I just like Creed Aventus quite a bit. Maybe an 8.5 out of 10 would be my score. And, you know, I like my batch, which is ending in 15X01, so it's a 2015 batch. The notes then, I'll give you the note listing for King Intense from Parfums Vintage, which is pretty much the same as those in Aventus. So we have pineapple, apple, juniper berries, blackcurrant, rose, jasmine, patchouli, musks, ambergris, vanilla, and birch. So let's talk about Creed Aventus briefly first. It really is a very, very nice, well-balanced masculine fragrance with a lovely element of a kind of crisp, fresh pineapple note, but there's also bergamot, a very nice bergamot note going in the opening of this fragrance and sticking around to some extent. Some nice musks in the base, the famous Creed ambergris accord. There's patchouli in there, there's a little bit of fruitiness from the blackcurrant. And there's birchwood adding a slightly smoky, woody element to the fragrance. Some listings also give oak mosses as one of the ingredients in that one. Almost certainly there are some captive ingredients in Creed's Aventus formula. Captive ingredients are ingredients which are owned by a certain perfume company and can only be used by them. So maybe if they have the rights to only buy, you know, a certain type of bergamot or bergamot oil, whatever it may be, or the ambergris accord, there may be things that with the best will in the world, anyone else trying to copy the fragrance can't get. So for me, I really like my batch of Aventus. I think it's nice. It's an 8.5 out of 10. It doesn't send me wild with desire. It's highly rated by most people who smell it, even if they're not really interested in the hype train of Aventus. It's become a bit of a kind of a bro scent, something for maybe guys without a real passion for fragrances in general, who just, there's this mythical image of it as a panty dropper, to use the, you know, an awful term, really. Something that's going to make women turned on or attracted to a man automatically, which is ridiculous, but kind of interesting and comical in a strange way. But even Luca Turin, the renowned critic, in his recent Perfumes the Guide 2018, said that it was a 4-star fragrance, good stuff. So if you actually analyse it objectively, aside from all the silly hype, it is a really good masculine fragrance. Unfortunately, it's terribly expensive, and at the moment I just looked on Selfridges website in the UK, £170 for a 50ml bottle of Aventus. I've got an older style 30ml bottle here. So great fragrance, very good, a little bit expensive. There are other more fun, exciting fragrances, even in the niche world, that you can get for much lower prices, e.g. Mancera Cedrat Boise smells similar, performs better, I like it better. But for those of us who really love the Aventus smell but want to get a cheaper alternative, there are many, many options. Of course, there are really cheap options like Club de Nuit Intense Man, which is pretty good, although I find it a little bit harsh, particularly in the opening. And L'Aventure by Al Haramain, also very, very good, I think, and for a really price like 30 something pounds for 100ml. I've found Pineapple Vintage usually just maybe has a notch more quality in the freshness, the naturalness of the opening in particular. So you're going to spend a bit more money, because this one, the new one, Pineapple Vintage King Intense, is going to cost you $79 for the 50ml, and that's roughly equivalent to £61. It just comes in this one size. They've upped their game with the packaging. They used to put some stickers on for a while, but originally it came with this rather nice thing, plasticky metal looking thing, and they've gone back to that, which I think is a real improvement. I think the bottle looks nice now. It's got almost a niche kind of quality, so I like that. And the boxes that it comes in, a little bit similar to Creed's boxes, very nice indeed. Here's my Creed Aventus little small box. There's a kind of similarity. It's actually a better quality box from Pineapple or Parfums Vintage, because it doesn't disintegrate so much. It's got a little bit more of a lacquer on it. Anyway, more importantly, how does Pineapple Vintage King Intense smell? And is it as good as Aventus, and is it better than the other Pineapple Vintage variations or other clones out there? I'm really impressed with Pineapple Vintage King Intense. I would say, for me, they've dialed down the photorealistic pineapple element that was very prominent in the original Pineapple Vintage and Pineapple Vintage Intense. This feels a little bit more like a balanced clone, a balanced attempt to mimic the normal batches of Aventus that most of us have. I don't know, fruity one. I think mine's a kind of slightly fruity batch, but sort of balanced. And I find that's what we get with this one. It smells more like a regular Aventus clone rather than the Pineapple Vintage thing, which had its own slightly different DNA that I could usually recognise. So to me, I think it's the closest they've come to my batch of Aventus. However, it is still not quite 100% the same. There are going to be some ingredients that they just can't get, as I've said before, in Aventus, so that, if you're looking for a 100% carbon copy, it doesn't quite do it. Arguably, you might enjoy it just as much as the real thing, so I think it's really good. But the price, of course, not super cheap. You know, for $79 for 50ml, it's about a third a price of retail of Aventus, maybe a bit less or more depending where you are in the world, but it's a lot less than the real thing, but it's not a super cheap fragrance. Performance has been really good. I've been wearing it around Claire from the Smurfy Girly channel, and she said, "Oh, you're wearing a Creed, aren't you? You know, it smells like Aventus." So, you know, we're not massive Aventus aficionados. We're not digging in that deep, but it does smell really similar in the air to somebody wearing Aventus. Very nice, crisp, fruity opening. They've said something about syrupy pineapple, I think, on the Parfums Vintage website, and I do get there's a nice element of sweetness. Some people found the note of pineapple in the other pineapple vintage versions a little bit sharp and screechy and annoying. I think you'll find that less so in here. So a really nice natural smelling opening. Some of the cheaper clones don't smell that brilliant in the opening. This one doesn't come off as a letdown when you first spray it. And sprayed, I've got one on each hand, the real thing Aventus and the Pineapple Vintage King Intense. It's not noticeably a cheaper or worse smelling fragrance, but they are a little bit different. So if you want Aventus, you will have to find Aventus. Of course, you can get decants maybe if you're in a Facebook group where people split it for much cheaper prices than buying any of the bottles online. And there are discounters where you can get it a little bit less than retail. So if you want Aventus, it to smell exactly like Aventus, the only way to achieve that is to buy the real thing. Pineapple Vintage is probably right up there with the best clones out there. And if you want closeness to Aventus, I think it is extremely close to my batch, but it's not identical. I mentioned Dua's 13ZZ. I found that to be really good too, but it came off a little bit different to my batch, but it's meant to be based on a 2013 batch, which is more smoky, so I couldn't really judge whether they'd achieve that because I don't have the batch that was based on, but that had really strong performance and very much an Aventus-like smell and not coming off as less good quality, but still different, so you can still notice a difference. Pineapple Vintage King Intense kind of level pegging with that one and its own other previous versions in how much I enjoy it. So I went on waffling a bit there, and I've decided to cut that short and summarise. So my opinion is really like Aventus, great scent, but not my favourite ever. And similarly, very fond of this new one, Parfums Vintage Pineapple Vintage King Intense. Really, really good, but not quite identical to Aventus, and I can't get massively excited about Aventus clones these days, but if you're a little bit less jaded than me, I would say this is worth investigating. You could try a sample from their website, and they have given me a code which is in the description and on the screen now, which gives you $5 or the equivalent amount wherever you are off the sample sets that they do. So check it out if you like. Thanks ever so much for watching, whatever you're doing in life. Let's project. Bye bye.
Smelly.